In a few minutes, we will describe how we can increase the amount of carbon dioxide removed by forests and soils to eventually cool the planet. But first, we would like to share this short excerpt from one of the climate emergency films.
Well,
with the clock ticking, it comes down to how we manage temperate forests. Use them for commercial purposes or keep them intact to cool the planet. While human activity has kicked off natural warming loops, human ingenuity could reverse their direction, turning them into cooling feedbacks instead. It would mean protecting and expanding forests, preserving marshes, grasslands, and all natural habitats. Using agricultural practices that store carbon instead of releasing it, and letting trees and plants do their job of taking carbon out of the air. This would lower Earth's temperature and kick in a self-perpetuating cooling feedback loop. George Woodwell was an early pioneer warning about fossil fuel use, setting off warming feedback loops 5 decades ago. He's convinced the solution lies with nature's own ability to cool the planet.
We can store carbon in life. If we want to be optimistic, we have to be very progressive in our transition away from fossil fuels and into a new green world. But it takes imagination, interest, and a recognition of the reality of an Earth that is failing at the moment. We can't allow it to be too late.
we can't allow it to be too late. That's why we're here. So we have a few moments, if you would like, for you, Greta, and for you, Your Holiness, to ask questions of the scientists. There was a lot of information packed in those remarks that they offered. So starting with you, Greta, is there anything you would like to ask of either or both of the scientists?
I mean, there's so much to ask, but I maybe to whether you could clarify in what way these effects, these aspects and feedback loops are not included and are not accounted for in, for example, the global carbon budgets, and why is that?
I'll start. Thank you, Greta. So in the models that informed the last reports that advised these global carbon budgets, permafrost was not included in those models. And part of that is because these models are built for the planet and not specifically for the Arctic. And so scientists are well aware of this and are actively trying to get these processes into the models, but sometimes science acts a little bit slower than it needs to when we think about policy, when we think about a climate emergency. So we need to take the information that we have, even if the models aren't perfect. The scientists are aware that this is happening. And when we think about managing for risk, we need to act. Maybe we don't know the specific number, maybe we know a range of numbers, but those numbers are good enough for us to communicate what these risks are.
I might just add that the models as they are tell us a pretty serious problem is on hand. And I think even the scientists who work with those models then are quick to say, yes, but it's really worse than that because of these feedback loops. And as science progresses and we learn more, and as Sue can tell you, it's not easy working in the Arctic. It's not easy to get those kind of measurements and data. But as we get more of it, we'll be able to do a better job.
Your Holiness. Oh,
Sorry.
Greta, go ahead. You had a follow-up?
Sorry. And yeah, because all these like announcements that countries are starting to do now, as for example, net zero 2050 or halving emissions by 2030 and so on, those are based on these incomplete carbon budgets, which gives us a way too low probability of staying below the safety limits set out. Do you think there's a risk in that this is being miscommunicated and misunderstood? And what do you think we could do about that?
I think there's definitely a risk. I mean, we're about 1 degree Celsius, and we're already seeing the hazards of climate change. We're underestimating what it takes because we're not accounting for these feedback. So there's definitely a risk. And what we can do about it, I think, is events like this, educating ourselves, communicating others about what's being left out and what we need to do. And what we need to do is be a lot more ambitious and to make our voices heard.
Yes, that's a big part of the reason why we're having this meeting. Your Holiness, is there anything you would like to ask of the scientists before we move on?
Now today, we already have the solar power, then wind power. These quite clean. We already also practice these things. Now we should put more effort. Then also, you see, we have to pay more attention the deforestation. We should now think more seriously the protection of this environment. Within my own lifetime in Tibet, in Lhasa area, when I was young, you see, most of the high mountain, lot of snow, but gradually, year by year, less and less. And here, Dharamsala also. Now, the snowfall, less and less. So now these are some scholar say because of global warming, now eventually like Tibet become desert. Some scientists say that. So this, so serious matter, like Tibet, I always now, although regarding Tibet, the political matter on these things, I already retired. But one my commitment is preserve Tibetan also ecology. That's something very important. Usually you see people, they do not much think about the importance of this preserved environment. So now we should cultivate more trees. Mm-hmm. Then I think these things, much depend on education. We feel 1,000 years, we simply go like that. But now today, because of climate change, global warming, so we have to think now seriously preservation of this ecology, very important. Then, since many years, I have one dreams. When I go flight Europe to Europe and to some African countries, the large area, you see, in Africa, the desert, sand land. And similarly in Australia, except in coastline, coast area, otherwise in center, the very center, there is one because of steam. I also visited there. Otherwise, to say, large number of Australia desert. Yet, Australia, all 4 sides sea. We have now technology translate sea water, salty water, to drinking water. I have seen. So we already have that technology. So we can use sea water, use for cultivate and drinking or use. So the Australia, big land, eventually can be cultivated area land. Then Sahara, from Mediterranean. So you can use the sea the transform drinking water, and also from the western side of Sahara, you see you can use a lot of sort of sea water and cultivate the Sahara land. So sometimes I have that kind of sort of dream, a possibility there. So when we saw due to global warming, because of the
Northern Hemisphere. Northern Hemisphere.
Oh, Northern Hemisphere, as you see, picture shows, there's a lot of sort of melting, the big ice. South Pole, not much sort of concern, but Northern Pole, we have to think seriously. Now, these pictures very useful, but now question is how to protect these. What is the sources of these big sort of melting, and what we can do. So I think nowadays related with environment. So now we already know these sort of serious consequences, this melting. But now important is discuss how to reduce this. And one way, as I mentioned earlier, you see the using soil,
fossil fuels. Fossil fuels.
So use more clean energy like that.
Thank you, Your Holiness. When you won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989, you began articulating a vision very much like the one you've just described now. You've been thinking about this for a very long time, and we're grateful for your leadership on these questions. And what we have with this new science that we've seen represented briefly by these scientists who spent their lives and continue to spend their lives doing this deep work, is that there are new ways to think about enlisting nature as an ally with us. We're part of nature, so we are of nature, in solving these very serious problems of these feedback loops that are spinning out of control and causing this excessive warming. So that is developed much more fully in the film series, and we will make available the links to the films to everyone who's watching, and hope that everyone will see a way to educate themselves more deeply and more fully in what's actually happening on the planet. And as Greta has said, the fact that the decision makers are not taking this into account in the decisions that they're making. They aren't paying attention to the damage being done by these feedback loops. So we'll ask everyone, the millions of people who have listened in today, to take inspiration from your lifelong effort to preserve the environment in the Tibetan plateau and around the whole world, and your deep, deep belief that we can act now as one humanity, 7 billion on the planet, and begin addressing these questions. So just before we finish, I thought I would ask each of you for your call to action, we'll call it. So what would you like to say as we finish? And I'll begin with Greta, who has started a social movement and mobilized millions of people. Greta, as we complete this brief time together, and as we hope very much that everyone will take from this a commitment to learn more about these feedback loops and how to manage them more effectively, what would you say to encourage people to stay with this challenge?
Well, first of all, I can clarify that I haven't created a movement. I haven't mobilized people. It is me together with other millions of people of all ages, but especially young people. It is we together who have done that. But also that my call to action would maybe be that we are right now at a time where we need to start to speak clearly, and we need to educate ourselves. What we need the most right now is of course climate action, but in order to achieve that, we need awareness, and we need for people to understand these kinds of global mechanisms and what is happening right now with the planets, and maybe also what is not happening. So that is my call to action. That is my if I could ask one thing of you, it would be to educate yourself, to try to learn as much as you possibly can. There's unlimited amount of information, and spread that knowledge, spread that awareness to others. We need to create a social movement. We need to shift the social norm, because if we are enough people who demand change and who are advocating for these things, then we reach a critical mass, and then we will no longer be possible to ignore. So that's what we need to do right now. It's not a small task, but it's something that we need to do because there's simply no other option. And also, of course, yes, also focus on solutions. And I think that you will be talking about that more later on, but also restoring nature is perhaps, it's not only a solution to the climate crisis, it's also a solution to the biodiversity crisis and so on. And then we no longer have the possibility to choose between different kinds of actions. We now need to do everything we possibly can. And then restoring and rewilding nature is perhaps one of the most important things of doing that, to change the way that we see nature.
Thank you.
And also, if this is my final statement, then I would also like to thank every one of you. Thank you to Diana, Sue, Bill, and of course Your Holiness, and Jimpa, of course, and everyone else who's taking part, and of all you for watching as well.
Well, thank you very much, Greta. Bill, did you want to say something very briefly now about solutions, just as succinctly as you can make it, so that we go away with a clear idea of what it is we need to advocate for?
So, do you want me to go next, or?
Yes, Bill.
So,
yes,
yes.
Yeah,
All right. Good. Well, to achieve a safe global climate, we must refreeze the Arctic to save it. To refreeze the Arctic, we must cool the Earth. To cool the Earth, we must reduce the heat-trapping gases of the atmosphere and stop feedbacks. And I'm going to say something that will probably shock many people, but I think it's important for everyone to know this. While it is essential to halt the addition of heat-trapping gases to the atmosphere, such as carbon dioxide from our energy systems and from our exploitation of nature, as well as to stop the release of short-lived but more potent warming gases, such as methane and refrigerants. That's absolutely essential. But current feedbacks will continue and raise global temperatures even if we halted all emissions today, because current amounts of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere are so high. So what must we do? In addition to halting putting things in, we must simultaneously reduce our emissions and increase the capability of natural systems to remove more carbon dioxide than we are releasing, so that the atmospheric amounts decrease. When we reach that point, we will begin to lower global temperatures. Recent studies show that by allowing more of our forests to grow, they would have the potential to store twice as much carbon as they do today. This process of forest restoration, called proforestation, will rapidly accumulate more carbon out of the atmosphere by avoiding harvest-related emissions, which, by the way, are typically half the carbon that's in the trees, and take advantage of the fact that larger trees accumulate and store the most carbon. We need to let trees get big in order to store the carbon that has to be stored. Reforestation and planting additional forests is a good thing to do, but it will take a lot longer. It will complement us for the distant future. Similarly, changing grazing practices on grasslands, altering farming methods, protecting existing wetlands will both maintain existing carbon out of the atmosphere and accumulate more while increasing the productivity of soils and agriculture. So as Sue pointed out, the addition of heat-trapping gases in one place has global climate consequences. Likewise, removal of these gases from any place on the Earth reduces the global amount of heat-trapping gases and contributes to eventually cooling the Earth. So as surprising as it may sound, saving the Amazon and many of our other forests will also help to save the Arctic and our climate. If we can reduce emissions and increase removals sufficiently to lower atmospheric gases, the feedbacks that were so harmful as atmospheric accounts were increasing. It will amplify reductions as we decrease the gases in the atmosphere.
Thanks.
Sue, would you like to?
No, I think, Bill, I'd like to go to His Holiness.
Okay.
We're running low on time, and I think we want to hear from His Holiness as the last word. And thank you for your summary. Your Holiness, the floor is yours.
So it seems now we, human beings, in different places, you say, our life over 1,000 years, millions of years, you see, we take for granted now this kind of life or this kind of a situation. Now through education, climate changing, and the human population much increase, then we, I think, very much utilize natural resources. So these are is a new development. So due to that, you see now some new sort of problems there. So I think we should now educate those, also the scholars should explain the reality, our lifestyle, unlike 100 years or 1,000 years. Now today our lifestyle some changing, and also utilize the natural resources very much. So now climate change and the natural sort of resources now much sort of effect. So we have to think seriously about the new situation and our lifestyle, way of thinking now have to think about today's reality. So through education and a young leader like you, I think raise awareness or seriousness through education about the future generation. Now things are now become more serious, but we take for granted and usual way. That I think now sometimes you see there's a mistake. We have to think seriously about reality. Then we have to think how to protect that. So now leader like you are very, very sort of important. You can do much uplift awareness. So very good.
Thank you.
And then previously,
Thank you.
Previously, when we face some problem, difficulties, then according to your own religion, faith, God, or Buddha, that's not sufficient. We must act according to the situation, not sufficient. God, Buddha saying that, not sufficient. We ourselves, as far as Buddhism is concerned, Buddha mentioned, you human being, you are your own master. Things depend on your thinking, your action. So sometimes we too much easy. We create a lot of problem. When we face that problem, we just say God. That's I think if Jesus Christ there, we pray to God, you, and who create problem? Not Jesus Christ, but you yourself. Now you have the responsibility. Buddha also similar sort of answer. So therefore, we ourselves, there are a lot of problems which due to our own behavior, then we have to think seriously how to resolve, how to reduce this problem. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you very much. You're right. It is our responsibility, all of our responsibilities. And maybe the best news, as you've said, is that Greta Thunberg and the many young activists, Greta, thank you for correcting me. It's many young activists who have risen up, are rising up now everywhere to demand that the world's leaders do act now to address this emergency. And they're also insisting that these leaders do so in the context of a serious focus on social and economic justice, climate, environmental justice. And so I think for us, it is now to join them all of us, to act not once, but over and over, to enlist others to join us until each one of us forms a multitude. If we do this well, if we stay with it, then we can imagine the possibility of a social feedback loop that builds and builds and builds to a global response of sufficient speed and scale to meet this looming threat. We can begin right away by spreading the word, demanding of our leaders, as Greta often says, that they act as though our house is on fire, because it is. We're not lacking for fire extinguishers. That's what the scientists are telling us. And some of them are in nature. We must take care of them so that they can take care of us, these forces of nature that these two scientists have studied so intensively. So please, everyone, watch these films. Make sure everyone you know watches them, talk about them. You can find them at Feedback Loops Climate. That's 3 words, feedbackloopsclimate.com. Join together, organize, learn more, study, educate. Yes, Your Holiness, education, education, education. Yes, Greta, we all have to become scholars and teach ourselves and learn. There are so many resources available that all of us could become quite expert if we just make the effort. There are many effective organizations that will welcome you eagerly, and being active with others is a great way to cope with the anxiety of our situation. We should hold to account for the health of the planet every leader we know in every setting, whether elected or appointed or self-appointed, and ourselves, our families, our friends. We must hold ourselves accountable too, as Your Holiness, you have said. Find the roles we can play, find our partners, find our passions, find our joy with the Dalai Lama, who has overcome great hardships by consistently spreading compassion and love and joy. We can start living now, all of us, for a future that we can love. So finally, we thank you all so very much for being with us. Your Holiness, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your wisdom, your guidance, your insight, and for hosting this event for us and with us. Greta, thank you so much. And it's just been such a joy to see the two of you join together for the first time on this computer screen. We will all hold that image of the two of you together, these two moral leaders, and all that you represent, all the people behind you. We'll hold that in our hearts as we go forward and take up this work together. And finally, I want to acknowledge with great gratitude the Mind and Life Institute for hosting this event and for their deep commitment and ongoing efforts to bridge science and contemplative wisdom to foster insight and inspire action toward flourishing, individual flourishing, societal, and planetary. And finally, thanks to all of you who have tuned in to spend this time with us all over the world. We're very grateful to you. You have our admiration, and go forward. Let's do this work together. Thank you.
This talk gives me opportunity seeing many of my old friends' face.
Yes.
Including their nose. So, this topic, the responsibility for everybody.
Yes.
I promise you, I commitment these continuously carry. And then, my brothers, sisters here, you also, you see, think seriously about this matter. Then, especially the Swedish young girl, very hopeful sign. Such a young, really now showing seriously about this matter. It's very, very encouraging. So, in a way, I think I may say, when I met former President of America, Obama, after we discuss discussions, then I told him, you are younger than me. So after me, you please carry, you see, these ideas continuously. And he promised. So similarly here, you see, a younger sister, so please, you see, carry also these, also the responsibility about humanity, about the world. Please carry continuously. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Your Holiness. It's wonderful to see you again. Happy New Year. Losan latashi dalek. I am so excited to see you, and my students and people all over the world have been looking forward to this to today, this morning in India, this evening in Boston, Massachusetts, where we are today. And I'd like to say hello to everyone who's watching this webcast from all different parts of the world. My name is Arthur Brooks. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School, where I teach the subject of leadership and happiness. And I, as well as everyone joining us today, we are thrilled to be with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is a living bodhisattva. He is the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism and the Tibetan people. Since 1959, he has lived outside Tibet, making his home in Dharamsala, India, from where he joins us today. The Dalai Lama works tirelessly for the dignity and prosperity of the Tibetan people and brings a message of compassion and love and enlightenment and humility to the entire world. In a world that's torn apart by hatred, the Dalai Lama is a voice for human unity. Over the decades, he has become the most recognized religious figure in the world, revered by billions of people and influencing leaders globally. He has changed countless lives, and those lives include my own life. His Holiness and I have been friends for 7 years. He has been a beloved teacher in my personal journey, as well as my leadership journey. He has helped me to understand that I am one of 7 billion human beings, that we are all brothers and sisters, and that my sacred leadership calling is to lift other people up and bring them together in bonds of solidarity. You will see tonight in Boston, in the morning, of course, in India, how he has taught me these things and how all of us can learn these things as well. In addition to our worldwide live stream audience, we are joined by a group of my students at the Harvard Business School from all over the world. They will be introducing themselves and asking questions later in the program. We're also joined by Srikanth Datar, the Dean of the Harvard Business School, Nithin Noria, the former Dean of the Harvard Business School, Douglas Elmendorf, the Dean of the Harvard Kennedy School, and Len Schlesinger, who teaches leadership and happiness with me at the Harvard Business School. And now we'll start our conversation about leadership and happiness with His Holiness. Your Holiness, you have taught me almost everything of importance that I know about the science and art of happiness. You've taught many years about this subject. Tibetan Buddhism teaches that there are 4 sources of happiness: spirituality, enlightenment, worldly satisfaction, and wealth. Spirituality is first on the list, so let's start with spirituality.
Yes.
What is the importance of spirituality and meditation in attaining happiness?
I believe, of course, firstly, I'm great honor and feel very happy, you see, having discussion with the Harvard University's professors and my old friend and some students. So now, happiness is I think, very purpose of our daily life for happy life. If, you see, the things become really unbearable, then die. Worst case, suicide. Even, you see, without suicide, but mentally unbearable sort of situation, then that really the will to live reduce. So automatically, you see, you will die like that. So therefore, the self-confidence with hope is the key factor for our survival. Now, usually I sort of expressing or description hygiene of physical and hygiene of emotion. Hygiene of physical is we usually take care. Now, hygiene of emotion, it's entirely depend on yourself. So that means, you see, fear, anger, you see, these mental sort of attitude really reduce your life. So mental level, happy, and a full self-confidence. But then that mental sort of way of thinking really give us some kind of will. I will. That's what I.